Here is speaking from the basic manual, project number 4. His objectives include selecting the right words and sentence structure to communicate his ideas clearly and vividly, to use rhetorical devices to enhance and emphasize ideas, and to eliminate jargon and unnecessary words. The title of his speech is War as Metaphor, 1984. Please join me in welcoming Andrew Cretella.
In 1948, George Orwell published his novel, 1984. And in it, he described how governments can control people. He warned that you can control the people if you control the language. He warned that you can control the people if you convince them we're in a constant state of war. So today, I'd like to examine how this relates to our post-9/11 world. So let's start with the language. We often hear that we're involved in a global war on terror. Now, first of all, terror is a state of fear. So if we're fighting a war on terror, it's like we're fighting our own fears. This is such sloppy, shoddy language that it insults my intelligence. Whenever I hear a politician saying we're fighting a war on terror, I feel they're trying to manipulate us. They're trying to bypass our brains and get that gut reaction. Now, it would be more accurate to say we're fighting a war on terrorism, much like we fight a war on drugs. But terrorism is not an enemy. Terrorism is a tactic. So who is the enemy? Is it Al-Qaeda? Is it the Taliban? Is it anybody we say it is? Are we actually going to say that the greatest superpower that has ever existed is fighting a war against a few hundred people in a cave somewhere? You see, if you don't specify who your enemy is, it could be anyone, even you. Are you a Muslim? What nationality are you? Have you ever been to the Middle East? You may be under surveillance. We've been reading your emails, listening to your phone calls. We even know which websites you've been visiting. We suspect you're a terrorist. Of course, that means you no longer have any rights. You are a casualty of the war on terror. And there's nothing casual about it. Welcome to 1984. And we can avoid this kind of madness if we return to the rule of law, the kind of law we had before 9/11. Does anyone remember the U.S. Constitution? The Constitution actually says Congress and only Congress can declare war. And yet here we are, mired in several wars without a declaration of war. And that means we have people in harm's way every day. Is that fair to our troops? Now, we often hear the expression, gotta support the troops. Well, first off, we all support the troops, don't we? So whenever I hear a politician say, gotta support the troops, I have this distinct impression they're trying to manipulate us once again into supporting the war. And is that supporting the troops? Well, today I want to suggest 2 tests to determine if we are indeed a nation at war. And these tests really provide support for the troops. First, if we are indeed a nation at war, we should have a draft. Without a draft, we have a relatively small group of people doing all the fighting for us. And they are put into harm's way again and again and again. That's not fair. It's not right. Second, if we are indeed a nation at war, we should have a war tax. Without a war tax, the costs are passed on to our children. And that is not fair. That's not right. By the way, the cost will exceed $1 trillion. Now, I'm not a fan of a draft or a war tax. I'm merely suggesting that we should be fair and honest about these things. If we're going to say we are indeed a nation at war, then there should be shared sacrifice. We should all share in the sacrifice, not just those in uniform. We should all have some skin in the game. And so, my fellow Toastmasters, I'm going to suggest to you and leave you with this thought. Imagine a world where presidents wage war without a declaration of war. Imagine a world where presidents wage war without paying for it, and the war goes on forever. And then ask yourselves, is this 1984, or is this today? Is this now?